Good morning. Welcome to today's meeting of the Assembly Committee on Government Affairs for the 2025 legislative session. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Assembly members Carter. Present. DeLong. De Silva. Here. Edgeworth. Present. Flanagan. Here. Gallant. Here. Goulding. Here. Gurr. Here. Hunt. Here. Jackson. Karras. Here. Kasama. Here. Wynn. Here. Chair Considine.
I am here. We have a quorum, and welcome to the audience here in Carson City, those joining by video conference in Las Vegas, and those listening over the internet. I would like to begin, as I do every morning, with some housekeeping measures. Please check and silence your electronic devices. If you wish to testify, please sign in at the table by the door and provide a business card to our committee secretary. When testifying, please turn on the microphone and clearly state your name and any affiliation for the record, and turn the microphone off each time you are done speaking. If providing handouts, please ensure that hard copies are available for members of the public. Electronic copies should have been submitted to our committee manager by 9 a.m. yesterday for committee members. We expect courtesy and respect in our interactions during the meeting, even if we disagree with someone else's position. I encourage committee members to ask questions and engage with the material presented. If you do have any follow-up questions, please flag them for me so we can ensure we balance our time effectively during today's meeting. And committee members will be using their laptops to view handouts and other documents. Please do not interpret this as a sign of disrespect or inattention. Today, we will hear two bills. First, we will hear Assembly Bill 37, followed by Assembly Bill 131. Both bills revise provisions relating to housing. To ensure we get through everyone fairly and in a timely manner, we will set a 20-minute time limit for each period of support, opposition, and neutral testimony, and each speaker will have up to 2 minutes. To ensure we allow as many people as possible to testify, feel free to say ditto if someone else has already covered your testimony. Well, let's get started. Assembly Bill 37. I will now open the hearing on AB 37. To present this measure, we have representatives from the Nevada Housing Division within the Department of Business and Industry. And go ahead whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Steve Acroth, Administrator of the Nevada Housing Division. With me today here in Carson City is Christine Hess, pardon me, our Chief Financial Officer. And we also have in Las Vegas, Nia Gurma, who is our current affordable housing advocate. Want to thank the committee for allowing us to present AB 37. And let me see if I can get this thing rolling here. Thank you. Still struggling. Got it.
Just use the arrows here.
All right, perfect. The Nevada Housing Division is your state housing finance agency. We are now celebrating our 50th year in existence. And our mission is to improve the lives and strengthen Nevada communities by expanding affordable housing opportunities, building self-sufficiency for the residents, protecting the residents in industry of manufactured housing, and fostering economic development. We do that through a small but mighty team of 49 full-time employees. So AB 37 is a division-sponsored bill. It's basically going to do three things and change three NRSs, and we'll walk through those very quickly and then be available for questions. So Section 1 of AB 37 basically is a name change to the Affordable Housing Advocate to an Affordable Housing Liaison. And this is because the primary responsibilities of that position lie in communication, not really advocacy. And so liaison is more indicative of the position responsibilities. And I'd like to turn it over very quickly to Nia Gurma to talk about what she does so that you all have an idea of her responsibilities.
Good morning. Thank you so much. My name is Nia Gurma for the record, and I currently serve as the Affordable Housing Advocate for the State of the Nevada Housing Division as appointed by our administrator. The primary goal of this role is to serve as a conduit between the Nevada Housing Division and housing stakeholders, including residents, developers, service providers, government agencies, and community organizations. This role also fosters collaboration, enhances communication, and ensures the effective distribution of housing information and resources throughout the state. My key responsibilities are to set up principal communication channels between manufactured housing park owners, affordable housing tenants, landlords, and the division to support mutual understanding and resolve concerns, encourage proactive housing solutions. I am required to respond to all inquiries, both written and telephonic, from residents of affordable housing and manufactured housing by providing clear and accurate information about rights, responsibilities, and available supports. I maintain a system to collect the information collected in these telephonic inquiries and synthesize this information to support the division in communication and create content for external communications, as well as highlighting the housing division initiatives. I also facilitate constructive dialogue between the resolution of housing complaints and coordinating responses and bridging communications with stakeholders. And I lead community outreach initiatives by planning and participating in public-facing events such as town halls, resource fairs, as well as webinars and conferences, and however else duties that as required by the administrator, including but not limited to special projects and collaboration between interagency initiatives. I realize that is quite a bit of information, so I would like to share a brief story just highlighting how those all intersect. Most recently, actually last year, I received a call from a resident, a constituent, and a senior mobile home park that owned her manufactured home with her sister. However, her sister had passed away. They both had were in a gated, well-maintained senior park facility. However, because of the loss of her sister, she had encountered a huge financial burden and was having a hard time making ends meet as far as being able to pay her lot rent as well as primary needs. We quickly identified that she would be a candidate for our lot rent subsidy program, which would provide additional support and financing to the park on her behalf. However, when we went to apply and approved her and submitted to certification to the park, we realized that though she owned the home with her sister, she had never signed the lease with the park, which then not only put her in a situation where she would not be able to afford her lot rent, but also be faced with eviction because she was not a legal tenant of the park. Through communication with the park management, the park owners, and our resources at the division, we were able to collaborate and find the resources to help her get funds to apply for tenancy at that park and be able to get her to have the rights of all park residents to stay in the park, and then also approve her for lot rent subsidy, essentially changing the trajectory of her life where she was faced with inevitably having to, she would have had to sell that park and find another place to live in a very volatile housing situation. That is just one brief example of some of the work that we do at the division. Thank you very much for the time. Again, my name is Nia Gurma for the record.
Thank you, Nia. That clears section 1. We'll move on to sections 2, 3, and 10, which are database modifications, and I will turn it over to Christine Hess, the Chief Financial Officer, to work through those sections.
Good morning, Chair Considine, members of the committee. Christine Hess for the record. It's my pleasure to present sections 2, 3, and 10, which for the most part are cleanup language from the division. In section 2, what you'll find there is really the formalization of a report that the Housing Division economist produces on an annual basis. Prior to this bill coming forward, The Economist did produce a report, and however, statute was unclear about actually requiring the posting of a report and formalizing the data collected. So we are just formalizing that so that there's no confusion. Currently, The Economist oversees, including this report now, 3 reports annually, and those are posted on the division's website. Additionally, and this is one that is near and dear to my heart, since 2009, the database of the division, the amount of funding supporting the database, which includes both our economist position and the technology platform, has been capped at $175,000. So the request of the division is that we free up that cap that was set in 2009 from $175,000 and simply make it a maximum of 6% of the monies that are deposited annually to the account for affordable housing, which comes from the real property transfer tax. I can tell you I don't foresee actually going up to that 6% cap unless there is some special project that needs to happen, but it just allows for the flexibility for the division to work. To put into perspective what the database entails from the division's perspective and why you should be of particular interest to it, it's essentially where we manage our assets, right? So the housing division has 42,000, that's a round number, but 42,000 properties that are low-income housing tax credit properties or have a formal rent restriction in our database. And so managing that database is where we also manage our compliance. And it's also our outward-facing component that you all can see at nvhousingsearch.org. So can the public, if they're looking for housing units that have rents that are below market and restricted. So it's a very important component, and really just being able to modernize and free up the division's ability to move in that space and also respond to this body as necessary will be helpful. Finally, what you'll see also that we also are cleaning up the language to remove the federal poverty level designation because in the housing space, we don't talk about federal poverty level, we talk about area median income. So in the Health and Human Services side, you'll talk about the federal poverty level, and there is some intersection in the language. And in fact, we would, with the permission of the chair, we'll be submitting a conceptual amendment to further clean up Section 3. And that's where you'll see there's some intersection with the Department of Health and Human Services and DWSS, the Department of Welfare and Social Services. We have spoken with DWSS, and the cleanup language essentially aligns the statute to clearly represent the allocation of the dollars. We'll still be, we more explicitly call out the support of the funds of the account for families with children, but we'll be removing the role of DWSS because it just doesn't make sense how it's currently aligned in statute. So again, a cleanup factor, and with the permission of the chair, we will submit those after this meeting. So mostly cleanup, definitely significant in how it impacts the division and our ability to work with our assets and share the story, share the work that we're doing across the state. And so that clarifies that one.
Thank you, Christine. And now we will move on to sections 4 through 9 and 11, where we deal with creating new tiers of affordable housing. Steve Acroft for the record, pardon me. And do you want to walk through this one, Christine? Thank you.
Good morning, Christine Hess for the record. I'll have the chair and committee allow how much time we'd like to spend on these definitions. For various reasons, we do also have some other definitions of affordable housing that came out yesterday, so we can go into again, happy to go into a little bit more of why these definitions matter and the thought process from the division. But I think what I'd really like to call out is especially a new Tier 1 definition of below 30% of area median. So this would define affordable housing for households with income levels below 30% of area median income. Why this is important is because the population that is below 30% of area median income is a different population in terms of their housing needs. So these are typically units, we don't have very many of them. Last count I looked, in my previous role, it was around 1,100 units of our 42,000 that are restricted to this income level because it requires a lot more subsidy in order for these properties to have rents that are affordable at that lower rate, right? Well below market. So, and for 30 years. So we don't have very many of it. Also, these households often tend to be the households that are at highest risk of homelessness. So they typically have other assistance coming to the table. Where you may remember Assembly Bill 310 from the 2023 session actually targets supportive service funding through the Supportive Housing Development Fund for this population, households below 30% of area median income. Again, it's an opportunity for this body, for the division, to clearly align programs and define programs and align it with statute. So that's with the Tier 1. The other tiers in this bill, AB 37, are not changing. They're simply changing because we added a tier. However, we did adjust the names in Tier 2 and Tier 3 just to align with the conversations that we're hearing out there with workforce and attainable housing. Frankly, they're all workforce and attainable housing, and we can umbrella them under an umbrella of attainable housing, and that's some of the language that's also going to be presented. So I would say for this conversation, happy to dig in a little more to those, but at this point, I'll stop there with the definitions.
Thank you, Christine. Steve Across for the record. Just to wrap up real quick, sections 12 and 13 had to do with, I believe, conforming language regarding the Affordable Housing Advocate, and section 14 are the effective dates of passage. And with that, that concludes our presentation, and we stand ready to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Our first question comes from Assembly Member Gallant.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you for this presentation. I appreciate that you guys are expanding some of these tier levels and trying to work in conjunction with the governor's housing bill. So I think that's great. So I want to ask about what is some of the specific differences when you're taking a look at the 30% AMI versus 40% AMI, because that 40% seems to be the HUD definition, right? Like they seem to really hold on to that 40%, like in Section 8, only their portion can't be more than 40% of what their income is. So I'm curious about what you're seeing different between like that population at 30% and that population at 40%.
Steve Acroft for the record. So most federal programs are actually aligned at 60% of the area median income. I know we have a Section 8 expert in the House for the next bill. We don't do that at the division. We're the financing agency. But specifically those vouchers and whatnot require that the tenant pay no more than 30% of their income regardless of where they're at. So most federal programs go up to 60%, our tax credit programs. Now, there is expansion. Even within that tax credit program, we can go up to 80% in what's called income averaging. So we can house 80% AMI folks, but the net of the property has to be 60. So if you do the quick math, if you have one tenant or one household at 80%, you better have another one at 40. So that adds up to 120, divide by 2, you get a net 60. So that's sort of where that first break and current Tier 1 is. Tier 2 in this, well, we're changing it up, but effectively then goes 60 to 80 and then 80 to 120. Now, what happened with the Housing Access and Accountability Act is we're now looking at 150 AMI for home ownership. So, and these are really targets. That's how you kind of have to view these definitions. So if the division comes up with a program, the state comes up with a program, the housing authority comes up with a program, they can guide it to, we want this to serve 0 to 30% AMI, or 0 to 60, or 60 to 80. And that's really what the whole gamut of definitions is designed to do.
Christine Hess, for the record, if I may, also Administrator, that paying no more than 30% of your income is different than households that make 30% of area median income. And in the space of the division and the work that we're doing, we're really focused on households paying no more than, no, excuse me, well, we'd love that, but we're really focused on household income. That's what our compliance teams are out monitoring, right? When they visit a property and they're looking at rent rolls, they're ensuring that those units are meeting the requirements that they put forward in order to receive low-income housing tax credits. So it's a really important process, and even beyond when those tax credits exist, because the division requires 30 years of affordability, our compliance teams are still monitoring that. So it's really looking at the household income, and that it's meeting, and that the rent is restricted per that.
So what is the, I'm honestly curious. So what, it seems like it was at 50% and you want to change it to 30%. And because those needs, right, are very different than somebody's at that 40% or the 50%. So can you paint a picture for us about what are the differences in the needs when you're going down in these 10% increments?
Good morning, Christine Hess, for the record, thank you. So I think when we think across affordable housing and across the affordability spectrum, we're usually looking at, again, household incomes, right? So area median income, let's say, I'm going to pick a number that's pretty close for the state, 75,000, right, would be our area median income that you would consider as kind of a starting point. So when you think of 30% of that number, thank goodness it's 8 a.m. I think I can do this math on the fly. Let's say it's $25,000, right? These are going to be people who are usually on fixed incomes, right? Or maybe some of our frontline workers, right? Working maybe at a gas station or a convenience store, minimum wage workers. Certainly a part of Nevada's fabric, and also our clients, right, in there, or our residents. As we move up the income tiers, you can just feel, right, how our communities come together and why the housing is so important and where it's missing. I've always said the market doesn't build housing at rents that are below market. That's just not how the market works. So the need to support the 60% of area median income, again, going to that 75,000, we're talking about people who, when I graduated college, that would be the number, right? It looks a little different now, but 45,000, let's say, 50,000 in our workforce, making our communities run. But the market doesn't build housing that's affordable for them, and that's what, there's some, but not enough, and that's where the resources of the division come in. Again, as we move up the spectrum of income levels, you'll get to where all of a sudden we have those that are in our market rate units, right? 70, 80%, maybe making 60,000. So, and those are hopefully people who are also saving, right, to enter home ownership. And again, continuing to move up the tiers and why they're important. Let's look at now what's currently in statute as Tier 2, and in the definitions here would be Tier 3, of 60 to 80%, again, saving. 80% is where you start to see not just eligibility for home ownership programs, but also that it makes sense financially, right? That they can afford a mortgage, right? So again, if I'm thinking of the 75,000 number now, we're up to, $70,000 a year, right? And again, kind of continuing up there, to go up to 150% AMI, area median income in the Attainability Act does make sense right now, right? There's a supply issue, affordability issues, interest rates. So the opportunity for the division to work with the state and support more households into home ownership as it makes sense with the high median prices, goodness knows, in the north. That's where you see those tiers really start to actually not just be tiers and AMIs, but starts to be our communities in Nevada. And it's exciting from a housing perspective to see them aligning. And then you really start to see, as you all consider your policies, right, how these policies are impacting the various residents across the state. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you. Our next question is from Vice Chair Nguyen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you both for being here this morning. And you're right, at 8 a.m., my math is probably not out there either, even though I'm pretty good at math. So I understand that the changes in definition is trying to put more lights on the different levels that we understand that we deal with here in the state. My concern is that you mentioned earlier, Ms. Hess, that the 1,100 number that you said, I think, out of the entire inventory, is part of this new tier, right? That is redefined. I'm concerned that somehow breaking it up will make them more forgotten in terms of having other tiers be prioritized. And so the challenges of this small population is that how are we going to put, the overall resources into this new tier, because it seems like we're kind of separating them out so that we can focus on the bigger tiers. Maybe that's not the intention, but it seems that way.
Christine Hess, for the record, thank you so much, Assemblymember Nguyen. I think that how you're feeling and interpreting can make sense, but from a programmatic side, it's actually the opposite. Right. So right now, someone addresses Tier 1. Tier 1 is below 60% area median income. There's actually no call out for the 30% area median income, which is why when the Supportive Housing Development Fund came about, Assembly Bill 310, right, Assemblymember Monroe Moreno, the sponsor of the bill, couldn't say Tier 1 because it's easier in our space, just like it's easier for the market to build market rate housing. That's why they don't build restricted units. It's easier in our space to build 60%. All day long, that's what our affordable housing developers are doing. What Tier 1 can do is allow the state to target programs to say, we potentially, well, actually, not potentially, we have supportive housing development funds, but you must utilize them only for Tier 1, 30% area median income housing, right? It really should allow you all and allow the division as well when we're monitoring our projects to track better the progress in that space. Is how I view it.
And I'll add to it, Steve Acroth, Administrator of the Nevada Housing Division. It's not just the state, it's the local jurisdictions also. So take, for example, Clark County Community Housing Fund, which thank God it exists and thanks God that they're feeding that. They can identify whether they want those funds to go to supportive housing or develop, whatever housing they choose to develop, if they're going to use, CHF, that's what we call it, community housing funds, if they wanted to use that to support their land housing trust. Okay, that doesn't target, to your point, that doesn't necessarily target 30%, but that would target potentially 80 to 120. So they can use it for that space, they can use it for 0 through 30 if they want to do supportive housing or however they want to use it. So it's not just the state identifying who it is, it's the local jurisdictions also.
And thank you, Administrator, for that response. I just want to make sure that our intention is not to leave those behind, even though we're redefining it. We want to make sure that they are prioritized, because Tier 1, right, the number one is somehow whatever day, the time of the day it is, the number one should still be prioritized, right, in terms of math. But we want to make sure that it's not left behind. So my follow-up question is that you put in this section, you going to determine, and on the flip side, you mentioned local. Now on the flip side, on the federal side of the conversation, with all the changes that might be happening, you put in here that the estimate must be based on the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Should that change, then what?
Steve Acroft, for the record, basically, that's the standard that is determined the area median incomes. So that's the standard across the board in the housing industry. That won't change. It might be delayed when they release those numbers because typically they come out regularly every year, and I can't remember, it is in the fall. Well, we're not 100% sure because HUD releases all kinds of stuff. But HUD AMI numbers are what's used in this space consistently across the board, not just in our space, but that's what determines the area median income throughout the country.
So quickly, the current could mean current 2 years old data. Current means whatever latest data you have.
Steve Acroft, for the record, HUD traditionally updates this annually on a regular basis. We anticipate that to continue to occur, but to your point, it may be questionable as to whether we get it in a timely manner.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Our next question is from Assemblymember Goulding.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the great presentation. It's evident from how passionately you're speaking about the communities and the families that are living in the housing, how much you care about them. My question is not about the housing itself, about those individuals applying for the subsidies and how how an individual or a family qualifies for that income level, because income is dynamic. So if an individual loses income, they're laid off from their job, for example, is there some sort of, I've lost my job, now my income is, presumably you're looking back, right? Like, so I would imagine that your income level is defined by maybe previous year's income, your tax filing or something. What happens if you lose your job? Can you, looking forward, say, now I'm not at 100% AMI, now I'm at unemployed, don't have anything? How do you adjust?
Steve Acroft, for the record. So those are federal guidelines that guide the program, okay? So, and there's a number of different programs, and I may phone a friend here to talk about what the Housing Authority does, if he's willing to come up, and I just got a thumbs up. So I'll probably call him up to help answer your question in their space. In our space, primarily it's through the tax credit program, federal, the low-income housing tax credit program. So those tax credits are provided to the developer for 10 years, okay? And there is a compliance component that goes to that. And if they, I'm kind of answering your question a little bit roundabout, but we need to start with the developer. They are going to accept folks who have to qualify at that income. To be candid, I'm not 100% sure exactly what components that they use to qualify, whether it's last year, whether it's this year, whether it's current month, whether it's last paycheck. But there are rules stipulated around that where the property managers have to vet that. And if the person is identified as being over income, they're at jeopardy of losing those tax credits. And that's huge because they're doing the development, they're providing the equity to the project, and if they lose those tax credits, the whole property kind of becomes in jeopardy. So from the developer standpoint, it's very important that they qualify those folks individually correctly. And I'll ask Bill Brewer to come up and to help answer the question because he does operate in that space vetting individuals. So thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Acroft. Bill Brewer. I'm the Executive Director for Nevada Rural Housing. Appreciate this opportunity to visit with you. So to answer your question as best I can, If someone loses income, it kind of depends on the unit they're in. So let's say they qualified at 60% AMI. They get into a unit, their rent is fixed by the property to be affordable to people at 60%. If that person loses income, he doesn't get any adjustment to his rent. And so unfortunately, he's forced to figure out how he's going to pay that rent, or he's got to find a different unit. Now, if he's on some kind of subsidies, for example, Section 8, all he needs to do then is requalify his income based on his current income, and the subsidy will take care of that difference. The problem is there's not nearly enough of that subsidy out there to help the people who need it. I hope that kind of answers your question. The challenge that we have as providers is we talk about these fixed numbers, 30%, 60%, and so forth. And those numbers are fixed and they set the level of the rent. But people's income varies greatly under that. And so the challenge is, if you have a unit that's affordable at 60% and somebody's at 50%, they've got to figure that out, how they're going to close that gap, because the rent doesn't change. I'll just give you an example. We have a tenant out in Winnemucca whose income is $900 a month, senior lady, and fortunately she's on a voucher system so that she pays 30% of her income, we pay the difference. If she didn't have that support at $900 a month, her rent at 30% even would be over $600. She couldn't afford that. She couldn't live. And so it really becomes a challenge serving those people at those very low incomes.
Thank you. I guess I'm thinking about federal workers who are losing their jobs and making sure that yesterday they didn't qualify and this morning you wake up and you do. Just want to make sure that we're incorporating their needs into the system, though I realize that there's not enough units. But we need to have a system that's reflective of changing income levels.
And I'm just going to put in a question here just because it's a follow-up to my colleague's question. I know she framed it in if someone is in a unit where they are with a 60% AMI, and they lose a job, what the difference is, but also what I'm seeing is seniors that have moved into affordable housing because they meet whatever the AMI is, but they've been there a few years, and it's not that they are losing their income, it's just that their income is stagnant and the AMI is going up. So I just want to confirm that that's the same situation. You're not permanently in a place if AMI outstrips your ability to pay it. Am I correct that you have to find something else?
Bill Brewer, for the record, you're exactly right, Chair Constantine, that those people are in a tough spot.
And our next question is from Assemblymember Kasama.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this really good presentation and discussion and overview. And we certainly want to do everything we can to help those at risk. And I know the pot of money isn't always big enough. But my question is kind of a big picture question as far as when we're helping people build these affordable and attainable units, are we focusing more on building units that would people would qualify at the 60%? AMI, and then for those, again, that fall below it, they would be looking to the housing funds to supplement their income for that difference in rent for the 60%. So again, the big picture question is when we're helping these developers build these units that qualify for the tax credit, is it more targeted at the 60% of median AMI?
Steve Acroth for the record. Great question. This is an awesome conversation, by the way, so I really appreciate it. So effectively, historically, we've had two pots of money, for lack of a better word, and then it's not even really money, it's authority. In the low-income housing tax credit program that was established in 1988, there are two different ways to build. One is what are called 9% tax credits. one are 4% tax credits. Both of them are based on population. The 4% is based on the amount of private activity bond authority the state is granted based on a population. The 9% is a dollar amount that's affixed to the population. So one is private activity bond authority, one is just tax credit availability that we can issue. We do this through our qualified allocation plan. Hopefully I'm not losing everybody because this is really where it gets kind of wonky and into the weeds. But the 4% program far outstrips the 9% in the ability to develop units. The 4% program is, as I mentioned earlier, maxed at 60% AMI net, okay? So we can create roughly through that program nowadays 600 units, 900 units maybe of affordable between new and rehabilitated properties. The 9%, we can only build probably nowadays a couple hundred. So there's that disparity. Now, when you're looking at, as a developer, as we've talked about, the only way to get these things to pencil is to try to create the amount of max rent. That's really what the bond program does. It limits it at 60%. So most of our construction in the bond program is at 60% area median income. Now, recently we had Home Means Nevada funds. Recently we've had Clark County Community Housing Funds, where we can put stipulations in, hey, we would like you to build at that 40% AMI, 50% AMI. And we've seen a deeper dive into those lower AMIs in that program. That money is all out the door effectively. In the 9%, it's a competitive program. We're working on making the 4% a competitive program, but the 9% truly has been a competitive program. And the way you win in that competition is to go into those lower AMI stratas at 30% or 40%, or you're providing supportive services, or your tribal housing. And there's different things that we have in those. But to answer your question, and I'm sorry I'm a little bit long-winded, but it's great that you guys are engaged, so I have your attention. The 4% program creates more housing on an annual basis than the 9%.
Thank you, Chair, and that was kind of the overview I was looking for. Thank you so much.
Okay, I do have a couple of questions. So one of them is, I know we've talked about AMI a lot in here, but it's my understanding that AMI is not only based on, well, it's based on area median income, but then it's further segregated by how many people are in the household. So when we talk about AMI being 30%, that's $22,000. That's for one person in a household. So it also varies depending on how many people are in the household, right?
Steve Acroft, for the record, absolutely, yes.
Okay, so then it's very hard, like if I wanted to ask you, what's the current AMI rates at 60, 80, 120, you would only be able to tell me those for a one-person household.
Steve Acroft, no, we could tell you what it is, but we would have to have a big giant spreadsheet here and have that available to us to do that, because it's also designated not statewide, but by county. So you have county and household, and there's numbers all over the map.
And if by any chance you have the all over the map available and you could send it to the committee, I think that would be very helpful to us.
Absolutely, we can do that.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question concerns low-income housing tax credits. So those are sort of the multifamily, multi-level entities that we're talking about. Are those primarily for-profit entities, the developers that are doing that? Are they some are nonprofit, some are for-profit? I just don't know the landscape on that.
Steve Acroft, for the record, it's all of the above. So there are private entities. You've seen them come to the fore. Ovation is a great private partner down in the Las Vegas Valley creating senior housing. They do work with a nonprofit, Coordinated Living of Southern Nevada, in their developments. Nevada Hand is a nonprofit, our largest developer of affordable housing, again in the South. That's a non-for-profit. Bill and his team have done great work in the 9% in the rurals. housing authorities. Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority is back up and running and doing great work down in the south in creating low-income housing for lower-income folks. So no, it's all of the above.
Thank you. I'm going to try to slip in a third question. I'm going to have to cut them down because I have two. I'm just going to ask two. Okay, so there are no situations where a housing complex is both nonprofit and for-profit, comma, because I'm going to make this one question. But is the for-profit complex, are those the ones that they're only guaranteeing for 15 years or 30 years and then they could go to market rate? Or does that matter if they're nonprofit or for-profit?
Steve Acroft, for the record, so again, a complicated in the weeds question, but effectively, when we issue tax credits federally, and I shouldn't say we, when any allocation authority issues tax credits, the recipient of those tax credits are given the opportunity to have affordability for 30 years. Now, at 15 years and post 15 years, there's an escape clause from that called a qualified contract process. In order to receive tax credits currently and for the past roughly 10 years in the state of Nevada, if you're going to receive those tax credits, you have to waive the right to a qualified contract. So when we issue tax credits and have issued tax credits for the last roughly 10 years, you're locked in with affordability for 30 years. And again, going back to our competitive program in the 9%, you get extra points if you go to 50 years.
And Christine Hess for the record, and we did just convert our bond program to competitive because of an oversubscription of the bonds. And in that case, you would lose up to 25 points if you're taking advantage of a qualified contract, right? So we're trying to make sure, obviously, humans, but trying to make sure that we are working with developers who are committed to an affordability period of 30 years and have historically been committed to that mission-driven, whether you're for-profit or nonprofit or a housing authority, that we have good partners coming to the table to support the Nevadans.
Thank you very much. I think we have one other question, but committee members, do you have any other questions? Okay, we'll go to Assemblymember Gallant.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. This is not about a current change. It's actually about something that's in statute right now. So it's page 7, lines 18 through 30. It talks about 85% of the distribution of public and private nonprofit charities, but it singles out that a majority of this money must be given to, and priority be given to women who are vets, women who are previously incarcerated, survivors of DV, elderly women who do not have a stable or adequate living arrangements, or unmarried persons with primary physical custody of a child. So is there some type of stats behind this that we're giving priority to these particular groups over others?
Christine Hess for the record. Thank you, Assembly Member. This language was added to statute in 2023 in Senate Bill 363. So this is new language for the division, and the Housing Division, of course, we're always working on how we have preferences or prioritizations of populations without violating fair housing. So this component that you see here, what came through Senate Bill 363, but ultimately where you see it on our programmatic side is through an application process. So an applicant's going to apply, they're going to indicate the populations they're serving, how that looks, and then our grants team reviews those applications to understand, one, to make sure that we're meeting fair housing requirements, of course, but then also how any of these are met, if that's helpful.
Steve Acroft, just to help with that, that is specific to the account for affordable housing. So that's not, as we're talking with tax credits, because that's been the conversation. This is just specific to the monies that are generated through the real property transfer tax.
Hello, Nia Gurma for the record. I'd also like to add that after that bill in 2023, the division did conduct an outreach to ensure that all of those organizations that meet those requirements were added to the interest list for our QAP, as well as outreach and heavily encouraged to apply for grants. Thank you.
Thank you. And it looks like our last question is from Assemblymember Flanagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. You mentioned early on in it that there are approximately 42,000 units that are available. I just hope you can paint a picture. I'd like for you to paint a picture as we look at the landscape of increasing prices on housing. What type of projections work you guys do to anticipate the number of units that we'll need going forward to kind of try to keep up as prices rise and we're trying to create affordable housing? Because 42,000, it's great to be able to house families, but when we think about our population as the state at 3 million and people falling through the cracks, what are we looking at needing to be able to try to accommodate? Thank you.
Steve Acroft for the record. So again, an interesting question. As we explained earlier with the 9% and the 4% programs, that's sort of where historically we were capped, right? All the federal funding coming in, we can only build X amount. And as things get more expensive, where we used to build 250, 225 unit affordable complexes, those are now 195 or 175 in the bond program. In the 9% program, where we used to build 80 units, we can now build about 50. So it's harder to build just because of the expense, as you've indicated. The Home Means Nevada initiative is going to create roughly about 2,800 units that we would not necessarily would have had in the first place. And those are starting just now to come online and be completed as we've moved forward. And also rehabilitating 800. So that was a huge influx in the inventory of affordable housing. Huge relative to us, not necessarily huge relative to the needs of the state. And the needs of the state, typically what you'll see is various reports. I don't know if the Gwynn Center report that just got released identifies a number. Typically the number cited is through the National Low Income Housing Coalition. The number that we have heard, and they just released their gap report, is anywhere from 75 to about 85,000 needed to house people so that they don't have rent burdens. That's a difficult number to wrap your head around, and quite honestly, you know, I think it's a little optimistic to think that everybody is not going to be rent burdened in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, Christine Hess for the record. Indeed, right now we're just building as much as we can, right? And maximizing all of our funding resources for supply. I think as this committee works through the session, the governor's bill that was just released yesterday, Senate Bill 5, or Assembly Bill 540, is really significant, right? A Housing Attainability Act, because the question here and the number I cited are properties for incomes below 60% area median income. But as we know, Nevada is comprised of 3.2 million across all income levels. And the struggles that Nevadans are having go beyond that. The direct link to the work that this committee is doing on Assembly Bill 37 is really important as we consider the database, the economist, right? Remember that 175,000 cap is the work of the economist. The reports that economist is collecting and producing, and ultimately, as we work through some modernization, which is active right now, to supply you all better data and to inform your policies, includes reports that where we work with the local jurisdictions, recently from 2023, a new report that came out to talk about supply and not just the state perspective, Assembly Member, on what's needed, but really the communities as they look at their planning, the local jurisdictions and local levels, and what they're predicting and planning for in their master plans. And so being able to take their community needs and turn those into an opportunity to support their needs through programs, right? So we can direct the funds, whether it's affordable below 60% or going up a little bit higher in area median income, and really that all-encompassing of housing attainability.
Thank you very much. We appreciate all the detailed answers and the questions on the committee, but I think now we will move to testimony. Testimony can be provided in Carson City via video conference in Las Vegas or over the phone, and further instructions for providing testimony on a bill can be found on the agenda. We will be maintaining a 20-minute time limit for periods of support, opposition, and neutral testimony, with each speaker having 2 minutes. As a reminder, support means that you approve the measure as written or as written with a proposed amendment that we have seen and has been approved by the sponsor of the measure. Opposition means you do not approve of the measure as written, including if you wish to propose an amendment that has not been approved by the sponsor. And neutral testimony means that you're offering insight on the measure, insight on the measure, but not expressing a position. And I would like to begin with testimony in support of AB 37 here in Carson City. And begin when you are ready.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Sarah Adler. Today, appearing primarily as Sarah Adler, but also on behalf of the Nevada National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI for Nevada. So this has been absolutely thrilling to experience the depth of this conversation and the learning experience for all of you who are so important to Nevadans, because housing is the foundation of any family's success. And you have learned and shown such eagerness to learn and such desire to protect the folks at the very bottom, the 30%. So NAMI has, we brought SB 68 last session, which sought to create a sustainable revenue stream for supportive housing. And we are in support of this bill because of its calling out the tier 1 at 30% and giving that housing more of an opportunity to compete for resources to sustain folks like my godson Jamie, whose monthly income is less than $1,000 and who needs this kind of support. So completely applaud Mr. Acroft and Ms. Hess and what they have accomplished here with this bill, and urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else here in Carson City, is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 37? Seeing no one approach, we will go to the phones. Is there anyone on the phones, AVH, in support of AB 37?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 37, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Hello, Chair and members of this committee. My name is Catherine Nielsen. I'm the Executive Director of the Nevada Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities. We wholeheartedly support this measure. I'm glad that the bill sponsor and presenters brought up the Gwynn Center's housing report. Our council funded the production of that report, so I highly encourage the members of this committee to refer back to the landscape housing report put out by the Gwynn Center, as it supports the measures behind this bill as well. And we'll save all the rest of our comments and say that we support this measure. Thank you.
Chair, we have no additional callers in support at this time.
Thank you. We will move to opposition. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition to AB 37? Seeing no one going towards the table, and ask in Las Vegas, is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to oppose opposition testimony in AB 37? And seeing no one moving in Las Vegas, AVH, we're right back to you for testimony in opposition to AB 37.
If you would like to testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 37, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers wishing to testify in opposition.
Thank you. We will move on to neutral testimony. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in neutral on AB 37? Seeing no one, move towards the table. I will go to Las Vegas. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in neutral on AB 37? Seeing no one, moving in Las Vegas. AVH, we're back to you for AB 37 neutral.
If you would like to testify in neutral for Assembly Bill 37, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. We have no callers for neutral at this time.
Thank you. Would the presenters like to come up to make any final remarks? Go ahead when you're ready.
Steve Acroth, Administrator of the Nevada Housing Division. Candidly, I did not see this discussion going this way this morning. It's just awesome that you guys are engaged in it, and please know we are available. Love to talk offline or in any framework. This is what we do, and we love what we do. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present AB 37.
And just as a clarifying, we should expect an amendment.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will close the hearing on AB 37. And we are continuing our housing discussion today, and I will now open the hearing on AB 131. To present this measure, we have Assembly Member Jackson. And whenever you're ready, you can begin.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Committee. Jovan Jackson for the record. I am happy to present Assembly Bill 131. I do have some co-presenters with me that will be helping me present. They are the professionals, but I will be giving a brief introduction of this bill. Affordable housing has definitely been an issue in Nevada. Especially since the pandemic. We've seen a halt in construction due to the pandemic and closures, and we have seen a limited availability for housing. I remember having a conversation with an older man, and his perspective of life was that you were able to get one job, be able to get a house, a car, and a good education with that one job. And that's not a reality for my generation. I'm 32 years old, and I would say my generation, one job doesn't pay the rent. It doesn't pay the mortgage. One job, you're barely able to survive in this economy. And, that term Nevada means home. And I think we should also focus on that. Nevada has always been an affordable place to live, a place where you could enjoy your money, pay your rent, pay your mortgage, and enjoy the city. And like we have said earlier, the math just ain't mathing, and it's just not because it's morning, but it's a serious issue. So let me get into the bill. Before I go into my presentation, I would like to note there has been a major amendment on the bill on Nellis. Please, all members should have a copy of it. It is no secret that Nevada is facing a housing crisis. We hear stories on the news. We receive concerns from our constituents, and we see the data reflected in state reports. The Gwynn Center published a recent report on housing that highlights the severe issue of affordability in Nevada. The report highlights that almost half of Nevada renters are excessively cost burdened, as they have spent most of their income on housing, and that low-income households have fewer affordable units available than any other state. In other words, as Nevada has rapidly grown with limited development, high construction costs, and an influx of out-of-state buyers have impacted the housing affordability and availability. The term affordable is being replaced with obtainable. And let's be clear, just because you could attain something doesn't mean that you could constantly keep it. It is critical that we focus on solutions that provide affordable options, especially for our most vulnerable populations. It is essential that Nevada seeks solutions to this affordability crisis. One option comes in the form of accessory dwelling units, or you may know as ADUs. Accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, are small living spaces on the same property as a main home that can be inside the main house, attached to it, or separate like a cottage in the backyard. ADUs are usually added to single-family homes. The Gwynn Center says that ADUs are a more affordable way to build homes, which can help ease the housing shortage and make living costs lower. Since Nevada is facing a housing crisis, it is important to find ways to create more affordable places to live. That is my goal with AB 131. And so I will go over the proposed amendments. I will briefly go over the amendments because the bill has ultimately been replaced, the original bill. The amendment provides a property tax exemptions for ADUs if meet certain criteria. Specifically, the ADU must be rented or leased to a tenant receiving assistance under the Housing Choice Voucher Program that is not shorter than 12 consecutive months. Be located on the same parcel as a single-family residence, which is a primary residence of the owner of the ADU, and comply with all applicable local zoning laws. To get an exemption for accessory dwelling unit, a person needs to submit a verification form to the county assessor. This form must come from the local housing authority and show that a person has a contract for housing assistance, that the tenant is getting help through the Housing Choice Voucher Program, and that the ADU meets certain federal quality standards. Also, only one ADU per property can qualify for this exemption. So I will pass the rest of my presentation to Mindy Elliott, who could give you more information on the bill, vouchers, and ADUs.
Thank you. Thank you, Assemblymember Jackson. And for the record, Mindy Elliott, M-E-N-D-Y, E-L-L-I-O-T-T, today representing several housing authorities. At this time, we have an expert here, I think Mr. Brewer, and I'm going to let him provide some context, and I can certainly backfill any questions that you may have as it relates to some of the specifics. I think the one thing that we learned this morning is that we already know that we have a shortage of access to housing, especially with the Housing Choice Vouchers. And on the phone, we do have Louis Jordan, who is the CEO of the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority. So at this point, I will turn it over to Mr. Brewer, one of the two experts that I have my phone of friends this morning.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. Bill Brewer. I am the Executive Director for Nevada Rural Housing Authority. Excuse me, I'm here to explain and support Assembly Bill 131 as amended, which addresses affordable housing through the use of accessory dwelling units. It's important to note that there's no silver bullet that's going to fix our housing problem, but this is one more tool that we can have in our toolkit that just helps us get there. AB 131 is a targeted bill that creates a property tax exemption for homeowners who rent out their ADUs to tenants receiving tenant-based rental assistance, such as a Housing Choice Voucher. The goal of this legislation is to encourage more homeowners to open their ADUs to voucher holders, thus expanding affordable housing opportunities to our communities. Here's how it works. If a homeowner builds or already has an ADU, a small secondary unit on their property, they may be eligible for a property tax exemption on that unit. To qualify, the ADU must be rented to someone who is receiving a tenant-based rental assistance voucher through a federal Housing Choice Voucher Program. The exemption applies only to the ADU and which is actively rented to a qualifying tenant. Why is that important? Because Nevada is facing a severe affordable housing shortage. Many individuals and families who qualify for rental assistance still struggle to find a landlord who will accept their voucher. I know in our housing authority, our applicants typically have about a 40% success rate. In other words, for every 100 vouchers we issue, only about 40 of those are able to find a place to rent. That's how difficult the market is out there. This bill helps change that by offering a financial incentive to property owners, essentially rewarding those who help address housing insecurity through the use of existing rental space. ADUs are one of the most efficient and cost-effective forms of infill housing. They don't require large land developments or new infrastructure. They allow for gentle density in existing neighborhoods. AB 131 leverages this housing type and is another tool in the toolbox which can create more affordable, accessible options for our residents, especially seniors, low-income individuals, and families. In addition, the bill supports inclusive community development, allowing people from different income levels to live in the same neighborhoods, close to schools, jobs, and public transportation. By passing AB 131, we're not only promoting the use of ADUs for affordable housing, we're also sending a message that Nevada values creative, local solutions to housing challenges and supports homeowners who want to be a part of that solution. We want to thank Assemblymember Jackson for providing us this opportunity. I want to thank you for your attention and your commitment to tackling our state's housing issues. I respectfully urge your support for AB 131 and will be available for questions as that opportunity arises.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And with that, Louis Jordan is on the phone from the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority. Can provide some context as it relates to the number of vouchers that they have, the waiting list, and some of the challenges that they've had relative to encouraging landlords to participate in their housing choice vouchers. If we could have Mr. Jordan join the conversation.
AVH, do we have Mr. Jordan on the line?
Mr. Jordan, if you're on the line, can you please press *9 to raise your hand? Please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Good morning.
Good morning. This is Louis Jordan, Madam Chair and Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm the Executive Director of the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority. And I just wanted to echo some of the sentiments that were expressed by my colleague, Bill Brewer. 131 will, again, give us an additional tool in the tool belt. We can, if you look at it from the perspective of just having something else to address the affordable housing crisis that we're experiencing here in the state, but also from the participant standpoint, another opportunity for a voucher holder to be in a neighborhood that could foster better employment, better transportation, better schools, ultimately helping them move towards self-sufficiency. We feel that's very, very important. And then the having an incentive for landlords to be involved. Here in Southern Nevada, we've recently presented incentives for our landlords. And as a result of, we offer landlords incentives to just rent to voucher holders in general. We've seen a significant, close to 100 new landlords, almost 100 new units we've brought onto our program. So again, giving everyone an opportunity to participate in this process. And then finally, in addition to those incentives, I think I would like for the record to be shown that in 2024 alone, the Housing Authority provided in rent subsidies to landlords almost $184 million. So it's $184 million that we put into our local economy for landlords that support the voucher program. And here again, it's just one more example that that we can have that will allow us to better provide choices for residents or tenants, but equally as important, get the entire community involved. It's a real strong business proposition that we're offering to that landlord population, and also an opportunity to help those who receive the subsidy an opportunity to increase their quality. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jordan, for your timely comments on this bill. I just very shortly, this is a very narrowly focused opportunity. Mindy Elliott, thank you. Thank you, Assemblymember Nguyen. Mindy Elliott, for the record. It's a very narrowly focused bill as it relates to the ADUs. It hasn't been done before in the past. This is a prospective bill. We're not sure what the utilization will be, but as stated, it's a tool in the toolbox. We are trying to help reach solutions with a de minimis amount of capabilities that we have right now in the affordable housing space. We can't build it fast enough. We can't provide enough inventory to the three housing authorities. So we really appreciate Assemblymember Jackson's foresight in allowing us to provide this opportunity for you this morning, and we're available to any questions. They've stepped away. We're available to answer any questions that you might have, and we do thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming this morning for this bill. We have several questions. We will start with Assemblymember DeLong.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate the presentation and the thought that's gone into it. Rather than specifics on the amendment itself, this is more of a procedural type questions. Does this amendment, or the amendments, because there are two amendments on Nellis for this bill, do they completely replace the text in the bill as introduced?
The bill that we presented today will be the bill that replaces the original text of AB 131. Jovan Jackson, for the record.
Okay, thanks. And did you accept the county's amendment as a friendly amendment? Washoe County.
Jovan Jackson, for the record. I believe the Washoe County amendment was pertaining to the original bill language. But if I'm incorrect, I apologize.
Okay. And that gets to, I look forward to reading the actual text of your amendment and to see whether or not there's a population cap still in it. So, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Our next question is from Assemblymember Hunt.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you guys for this amazing presentation. And Assemblyman Jackson, I think this is good, what you're doing. My question is, the ADU's been put in, been able to be built in the yards of people with historical areas. I was wondering if there's going to be like a size limit.
For the record, Mindy Elliott, no. To respond, there isn't a size limit, but this bill, just so everyone's clear, the conceptual amendment that's being proposed, this is a gut and replace for all intents and purposes. The bill, the original AB 131 is gone, and this is going to replace. So there isn't a reference any longer to historical or population caps with this amendment. Most of the ADUs are between 800 and 1,000 feet. And when we originally had this concept, it was anticipated that this bill might be really, the utilization would be for seniors, maybe a veteran, because of the size of the units. Most of the units are rather small. But if there is a larger building on the dwelling, which they might be, especially in rural Nevada, that certainly a housing choice voucher for a family would be applicable. There isn't a limitation on size, and there isn't a limitation on numbers as it relates to the family members that can utilize the vouchers. I hope that answers your question, Assemblymember Hunt.
Follow-up, Chair? Okay, that did answer my question because of the fact that, you know how me being a realtor, and I have really worked with a lot of people with the choice vouchers, and it's so difficult because, like you say, the landlords don't want to, they can't afford to go with the rent, or they don't do the rent, at affordable prices. So I was wondering if there was some type of protection for what he's trying to do, to where they can't, the landlord, once they get these and they're on their properties, then all of a sudden they're going to go up on the prices. Or is they bound by this bill to keep it under the choice voucher program?
Hi, Bill Brewer for the record. Yes, they would be, according to the bill as it's presented. They need to sign a 12-month lease, and they're tied in for that 12 months. Should they choose to do something different after that time, then they lose the tax exemption.
Thank you. Our next question is from Assemblymember Gurr.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Assemblyman Jackson, Member Jackson. I'll get it right in a minute, and the presenters. I think the intent is great. I think the look is bad right now. We have 2 amendments, a bill that's been gutted. It is very difficult for me to get around where we're headed here, and I would like to see the revised bill, the bill in revised legalese from LCB, so then I can review it a little closer and have a little better handle on it. It's totally confusing the way it's presented at this point to me, and I think those questions are around everywhere. But I think the intent's good.
I'm sorry, Assemblymember, what was your question?
Can we get a revised LCB version of what the real bill is?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, our next question is from Assemblymember Gallant.
Good morning. Hi. So first, I just would like to put on the record and just a note is that the affordable housing website that you guys have built, and I think that's at the federal level, is awful because it does not really encourage the tenants to reach out and call us. And it's very confusing that they think they can apply online on that website, even though we have continued to include notes saying you can't apply online, please reach out to us, go to our website. So I've had struggled, and I've been running a Section 8 for over 10 years. I probably have close to 90 Section 8 leases. So on the landlord side, I know the process pretty well. So that has been a struggle with us getting connected with tenants. Even though we're reaching out to them, the follow-up is a struggle. So just note on that, maybe there could be some improvements. Now, on to my question, sorry. So first of all, I do have a question in terms like holistically on this. First of all, in order to have a Section 8 voucher, you have to sign a lease for 1 year. So why are we reiterating that within the bill? And then we're really just looking at 1-bedroom vouchers. How many participants are we looking? What is the 1-bedroom voucher participant population? Because the majority of the tenants that I end up dealing with are like single mothers. And really we have a need for getting housing for those sized families. Like that is a struggle. And then also, I recall Summers Armstrong, this is close to the exact same bill, if I'm correct, last session. And why not encourage it to the tax, the 3% tax cap to all Section 8 housing or government-assisted housing, because there's other programs, so that we can really tackle this much more aggressively and encourage landlords to rent to Section 8. Because I'm a cheerleader over here. I love the program. So I know those were a lot of questions, but I would love to be able to see this not just for the ADUs, but across the board so we can get more landlords to want to participate in this program.
For the record, Mindy Elliott, there's a lot of questions there. So let me start with the germane question. The Assembly Bill 131 originally was pertaining to accessory dwelling units, ADUs. In order to keep the bill germane, yes, we worked on AB 416 last session during 2023. It was a pilot program to see if it was feasible for us to even try to do this. Now, in 2023, you may recall, we had a lot of ARPA funds, and our focus was in construction. We were trying to do Home Means Nevada. We had $500 million that we were building 4% or 3% projects through the housing division, actually working on getting, and that $500 million was providing gap funding for those that weren't here in 2023. We were providing gap funding for projects. We're building over approximately 2,000 new units. They're just starting to come online, but that was really the focus in 2023, was build, build, build. So now Home Means Nevada, the funds are used up, they're gone. So now we're trying to figure out, well, what are the other utilizations what else can we do to help with affordable housing? So we looked back on some of the ideas that we had and that we've had. I've been working in this space since 1991. I'm not sure Assemblymember Jackson was even born yet, but I think, which makes me feel really great. But I think from the standpoint of how we move forward, we really are trying to figure out as a state, because if you look back in time, in 1980 when the vouchers, a little history for everyone on the committee, if you don't mind. In 1980, when the voucher programs were created at the federal level, right? Vouchers were issued. Nevada was a very small, tiny state. The West was small as it relates to the rest of the country. The East was where the population existed. So the vouchers have not been adjusted for populations. So Nevada has grown exponentially, Utah has grown exponentially, Washington's grown exponentially, Idaho. The number of vouchers, housing choice vouchers that are coming into the states, plural, have not changed. So we're trying to figure out, we haven't grown, we didn't build like they did in the East. If folks are from the East Coast, there are huge apartment complexes that were built prior to the 80s that were built by the federal government. We don't have those here, right? So we're trying to figure out, since we can't grow fast enough, we have a shortage of the ability to grow, costs are growing up on a construction, what can we do to backfill as we're building? How can we backfill so that we can take care of our families, seniors that, or single moms, or whoever it might be that might have a need for a place for a roof over their heads. So we looked at the ADUs when Assemblymember Jackson contacted us, and I said, look, we had this bill. It's a great idea. It's a pilot. It's an idea. We don't know if it's going to even work, but we're certainly willing to try, right? We're willing to try anything to help fill our toolkit to help families, because that's what everyone at this dais wants to do at the end of the day, is help families. We have a lot of housing bills this session, as we all know. But I think that from the standpoint of the ADUs and why we're not utilizing it to further at this point, because it really is a pilot program to see if it works. From the standpoint of the assessor, they have to go in on an annual basis and prove to the landlord has to prove to the assessor, if you're going to get an abatement, you have to show you have a contract. You have notifications from the housing authorities, no matter which housing authority it is. So there is some data that needs to be collected for us to even try to see if this is going to work. And I hope that provides some context to Assemblymember Galan as we, and this might be a great opportunity as we may be back in 2 years to say, you know what? This is really working, Assemblymember Considine. Can we have a bill to expand the program? And I hope that helps.
Jovan Jackson for the record. I think we would love to have more, which we have learned in this building. Everything comes with increments. And so like she said, it's like a pilot to see if it works. And I would say I worked with disabled folks for over 10 years. And when the Section 8 list does open, we sign them up immediately. Did I say Jovan? Jovan Jackson for the record. We sign them up immediately, but it often takes years for them to actually get that voucher, almost close to 10 years. And those are just individual people. They don't have family, they don't have kids, they're usually older folks. So it's really just one person. So these ADUs would truly benefit that population. And then I'm not sure if the VASH are implemented with this. Even the VASH for our veterans, a lot of the veterans, they're older folks. They want to be by themselves. They live by themselves. So they're still a very beneficial use for just focusing on ADUs with one person, especially towards our disabled populations.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Chairperson. I might just add briefly to Assemblymember Gaunt that our voucher holders, 70% of our voucher recipients are either elderly or disabled, and so one person. So the number of true families are limited. Bill Brewer, for the record, sorry. That's just rural. Mr. Jordan can give us better numbers for the Vegas area.
Thank you. Our next question is from...
Echoing the...
never mind. Go ahead, Mr. Jordan.
I was just going to say, Louis Jordan for the record, echoing the sentiments of both Mr. Brewer and the Assemblyman. There's a housing need across the board to the point of veterans. Yes, if this bill were to come into place, it would support those in our VASH program, as well as when we look at the number of individuals who are just in the workforce who are by themselves. The family structure in our society has really been redefined. And while I could definitely down the road, in fact, right now, if it were possible, I would love to see a bill that would offer some sort of incentives for all landlords to participate in the voucher program. But as previously mentioned, having an opportunity to just start somewhere and start at a place that will at least give us some chance to collect data, to see what works, what doesn't work. We just thought that this was we could support this as a good starting place. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is from Assemblymember Kasama.
Thank you, Chair. I think you explained it, but I just wanted to clarify again that, so now with the new amendment, there's no reference to historic property. So that whole section is gone.
For the record, Mindy Elliott, that whole section is gone. Anything that you have, poof. It's been magically disappeared this morning. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Okay, our next question is from Assemblymember Flanagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. A lot of conversation today on a very serious issue. My co-assembly member may have kind of asked the question concerning the number of units, but there's a section in here under 5 that talks about ADUs having separate kitchen, bathroom, sleeping area. And sometimes you'll find the sort of, they call it the mother-in-law suite or whatever sometimes, which can be used that way on a lot of, newer homes in certain neighborhoods. And you'll find that they do have sleeping space, they do have a restroom. I've seen them where they don't have a kitchen. But the people allow the person to come into the primary residence to use the kitchen to prepare food or whatever. So I guess I'm wondering, have you done any inventory that shows there's a certain number of units that will qualify, or is this the creative, innovative space where you put it out there, and if the person has something on their property that does qualify, you're hoping that they will fall into this pool.
Bill Brewer, for the record. That is an issue for the voucher side of the program, not so much for this bill. But to qualify for a voucher, the unit must have a bathroom and a food preparation area separate from the bathroom, not necessarily a kitchen as we often think of it, but it must have a food prep area separate. So the property you're describing probably would not qualify.
Madam Chair, can I have a follow-up? And this question is related to the conversation. And it's about the creating more of these spaces and having the landlords, right? Because what I feel like I've seen over the years is there isn't accountability on the landlord or the tenant to upkeep property. So in neighborhoods that may be older, that do have the separate dwellings on their property, and then they rent to someone, and they're just as like, it feels like there's very little accountability of who's responsible for the aesthetics. So in trying to identify more people to participate, at some point, where does that accountability fall, or is that a future conversation? Maybe not part of this bill, but in the universe that it should be a bill, because I think that's where some of the resistance comes in on becoming a landlord, because your property just gets torn down, and then the adjacent homeowners suffer from property values declining because you have the voucher recipients who don't take care of anything.
Bill Brewer, for the record.
Lewis.
Sorry, go ahead, Lewis.
No, go ahead, Bill.
Bill Brewer, for the record. That is a problem we address with the vouchers. Those units are inspected every year to make sure they meet minimum property requirements. That inspection will not call out if the unit needs painting or some cosmetic need like that, and so that's really on the landlord to do that. I can also tell you that there is a bill pending that addresses that landlord issue and maintaining their units as well.
Jovan Jackson, for the record. I'll defer to Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Assemblyman Lewis Jordan, for the record. I just wanted to say that here in Southern Nevada, in particular, we have really ramped up our efforts to work with landlords in the communities in which we have housing vouchers, as well as our recipients of the voucher. In addition to the landlord incentive programs that I mentioned earlier, we've since the last few years, we've created a landlord council. Bill mentioned the fact that there are inspections that we do annually, but here in Southern Nevada, we like to say we've taken it a step further. There's a very, very strong expectation that both landlords and participants adhere to the standard. You know, we simply say that if you can go in a neighborhood and you can identify a house that's receiving our voucher, we're not doing a good job. And so we've worked very hard communication-wise in the briefings with our voucher holders, as well as ongoing communications that go out to our landlords about basic property standards. And here again, this bill would just give us another opportunity, hopefully, to get more landlords to give participants choices and really rid ourselves from some of the awful stigma, if I can be very sincere, some of the awful stigma that our program has received. You know, there's data that will suggest that a voucher holder and his or her ability to live correctly in a unit is no different than anyone else. But again, some of the stigma, and I'll be very candid, we've earned some of the stigma. We're working extremely hard to rid ourselves of it. Lewis Jordan, for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis, for that. And I'm glad to hear some improvements are being made. It unfortunately literally took death in one of the neighborhoods in my district for that home to be improved. So, and I didn't see any inspections. So I'm glad to know you are now doing inspections, and I hope that extends to continue to make this program work.
Jovan Jackson, for the record.
Thank you.
I used to rent a house out on Section 8. It was in a HOA My HOA kept me very, very aware of what was going on with the property. If there were any issues with the property, I got an update. I was able to, work that issue out with the tenant. So, as a landlord, you're able to address any concerns with that tenant like it was any other tenant that you're renting to. And Assembly Member Flanagan question more concerns the traditional views of these Section 8 vouchers. I think with this bill, it focused on ADUs, and these ADUs are rented out from a primary residence. So I think it actually would be beneficial because now these primary residents will have direct communication, direct contact over the ADUs. They could directly oversee the ADUs and make sure the aesthetics are well.
Thank you. Our next question is from Assemblymember Karas.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Assemblymember Jackson and the rest of you for bringing this. I was really happy to see it change from its original form, and also happy to see the Washoe County amendment go to the wayside. So, where am I going with this? So, there's the idea of casitas for an aging parent has been very popular in the last decade. So there should be many, many units like this that will be available. And unfortunately for the families, a lot of those elderly members have now passed on and they don't know what to do with this little ADU, as we call them now. My question is this, because there's three different things we sort of looked at here with the original bill, the Washoe bill, and now the current conceptual amendment. But I maybe I missed it, but I don't know that I saw anything on HOAs in the conceptual amendment. So there's no prohibition for an HOA separate dwelling unit on a property, other than what the HOA may have itself, correct?
For the record, Mindy Elliott, Assemblymember Karas, you're exactly correct that it's up to the HOA, whatever their requirements or non-requirements are as it relates to habitability of that particular property.
An excellent solution to our huge problem. Thanks for bringing it forth, Assemblymember Jackson and all of you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And seeing no additional questions from the committee, I want to thank you all. I know that this amendment and this gut and replace happened very quickly, and thank you all for coming together and presenting this. And we will now move on to testimony. Again, testimony can be provided in person here in Carson City via video conference in Las Vegas or over the phone, and further instructions for providing testimony on a bill can be found on the agenda. I would like to begin testimony here in Carson City in person. If there's anyone in Carson City wishing to support AB 131, please approach the table and begin when you're ready.
Greetings, Chair Considine, Vice Chair Wynn. My name is Jagada Chambers, JAGADACHAMBERS. Definitely happy I'm in the building today with the amendment, to get the behind the scenes. I can definitely say I am in support of the amendment. The housing crisis is a reality, and I just feel like this is a tool that will also increase generational wealth and folks being able to hold on to their properties. So again, I salute Assemblymember Jackson for bringing the bill and the attentiveness of the committee and listening to it. Thank you all.
Is there anyone else in Carson City wishing to testify in support of AB 131? Seeing no one approach, is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in support of AB 131? And seeing no one, AVH, is there anyone on the line in support for AB 131?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 131, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Chair and members of this committee, Catherine Nielsen again from the Nevada Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities. We echo all of the comments and know how supportive this is. And we just, again, encourage you to look at the Gwynn Center Housing Report to really understand the landscape of the housing crisis that we're having here in our state. And we highly support this measure. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Vice Chair and members of the committee. This is Dora Martinez with the Nevada Disability Peer Action Coalition, and we wholeheartedly support this bill. And thank you to the Gwynn Center's report. Finally, it is accessible to a blind individual like myself, and we hope that you guys support it. And thank you.
Chair, we have no additional callers in support.
Thank you. We will move on to opposition. If you would like to provide opposition testimony to AB 131, please approach the table and begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Warren Hardy, representing the Nevada Urban Consortium. We had concerns with the bill as originally drafted. We are, Assemblymember Jackson provided us with the amendment. Our members are reviewing it now, and we'll have comments back to him as soon as possible. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Considine, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Cadence Matijevich, C-A-D-E-N-C-E-M-A-T-I-J-E-V-I-C-H, Washoe County Government Affairs Liaison. Madam Chair, if I may, I'd like to speak a little bit to the amendment that Washoe County had presented on the original version of the bill, which no longer applies based on the gut and replace. And the reason for that amendment was because Washoe County's ordinances pertaining to ADUs are less restrictive than what the original bill was. So that bill would have been more restrictive. So we support ADUs. We support the concept of the new bill, and we're confident that we can get to a place of support. But there are some technical issues related to how the exemption interfaces with the single-family resident partial abatement in NRS 361.4723. So there's some really technical pieces here. I'm not an assessor. I shouldn't even been trying to play one on TV. But there are some pieces that I think we're still going to need to work through. I'm confident that we can do that, and look forward to getting to a place of support. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Considine, Vice Chair Wynn, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jennifer Berthiaume, that's B-E-R-T-H-I-A-U-M-E, Government Affairs Manager at the Nevada Association of Counties, or NACO, whose members represent all 17 counties. First, I'd like to thank Assemblymember Jackson for our brief meeting this morning, and can appreciate his intent to increase housing supply. Counties are opposed at this time due to the late nature of the amendment, and our assessors and treasurers needing some more time to assess potential impacts to counties. So, thank you.
Is there anyone else here in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition to AB 131? Seeing no one, we will move to Las Vegas. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 131? Seeing no one. AVH, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in opposition to AB 131?
If you would like to testify for opposition of Assembly Bill 131, please press *9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers for opposition at this time.
Thank you. We will move to neutral. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify neutral on Assembly Bill 131? Seeing no movement here in Carson City, we'll go to Las Vegas. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify neutral on AB 131? Seeing no movement there, we're back to you, AVH, for neutral on 131.
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working. We have no callers for neutral at this time.
Thank you. Would the presenter like to come up to make any final remarks?
Jovan Jackson for the record. I just want to really thank Chair for working with me. I know this is very last minute, and as a freshman legislator, you kind of learn on the hip, on the move. So I definitely want to thank the committee, especially Alex, for assisting me with this. And then I also want to give a special thank to Assemblymember Gallant for providing the housing resources that are needed in our valley. And I hope you guys are able to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 131, and that just leaves our last item on the agenda, which is public comment. Public comment is not an opportunity to rehear testimony on a bill, and we ask that you please keep your public comment to topics within the jurisdiction of this committee. And as we say every day, at this committee, we expect courtesy and respect, even if positions differ. As a reminder, members of the public can provide public comment in person or telephonically and may submit public comment up to 24 hours after the meeting. Instructions for providing public comment can be found on the agenda. To provide public comment telephonically, dial 888-475-4499. When prompted to provide a meeting ID, enter 846-2007-2717, and then press pound when prompted for a participant ID. Each person will have up to 2 minutes to provide testimony. Please remember to clearly state and spell your name for the record. Is there any public comment here in Carson City? Seeing no one approach, is there any public comment in Las Vegas? Seeing no one approach the table, AVH, is there any public comment on the phone lines?
If you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Thank you, Chair. We have no callers wishing to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you. The next meeting will be Thursday, March 27th at 8 a.m. here in room 4100. That concludes our meeting for today. The meeting is adjourned.